Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Patrick Bringley session. As a New Yorker and a visual artist, I have been so looking forward to this session. So my name is Jen Comer, and I had the incredible opportunity to create and direct the Young Writers Awards this year. Thank you. And we all know that dreams don't happen in a silo. So I would like to take the opportunity to thank Patty Manigo for her generous donation to make sure that this opportunity continues to grow and flourish for years to come. So the Charleston Literary Festival's Young Writers Awards recognizes students with exceptional talent while promoting the transformative power of literature and encouraging creative growth. The awards begin as a writing contest, and the works are submitted by the students and adjudicated by a dedicated panel of literary professionals. The works are selected by three criteria: originality, skill, and the emergence of personal voice. The award winners get cash prizes, but we have also had just incredible support from the arts and cultural community here in Charleston. So a huge thank you to our partners, Buxton Books, the Gailliard Center, Charleston Stage, and Charleston County Public Library for their contributions. So our award winner today is Isabella Norgata. She is a senior at Lucy Beckham High School. She uses writing as a tool of reflection and growth and credits writing as an outlet of freedom and expression for communicating her emotions and navigating past adversities. She hopes to continue to pursue writing and publication, specifically fictional short stories, playwriting, and poetry. And she believes that the Young Writers Awards have given her a platform for her voice to be heard, and I am ever so grateful for that. Please join me in welcoming Isabella as she reads an excerpt from her first place personal essay, Perseverance and Evolution.
COVID hit at the end of my 8th grade year, but my life changed when I was a freshman. I fell into a nearly inescapable depression towards the end of 2020. Everything accumulated at night, 5 days before my 15th birthday. But first, I need to introduce Charlie. For years, my little sister Gabriella begged for a kitten. We had a cat, but she was always outside, and Gabby wanted a kitten of her own. So we got Charlie for Gabby's 11th birthday. He is the most incredible cat I've ever had. His little smile, his love for cuddles, and his heart full of love brought new life to our family. But I was still trapped. That night in December, I felt like a failure. I wasn't good enough. I was too weird, annoying, untalented, and worthless. My brain was broken. Every single time I tried climbing out of the void that I was in, some new darkness would pull me down. Clouds of negativity swirled my mind as I reached for a pill bottle crying. But I shook the bottle a little too loud. I heard a gentle mew and turned to see I had woken Charlie up. Just seeing me made him so happy. His purrs traveled across the room and punctured my weak little heart. I paused, looked down at the bottle, looked back up at him, and his purrs increased in volume. I looked at the bottle again. My eyes swelled with tears, and I put the bottle back. I curled up to him. His sweet purrs, like a lullaby, soothed my mind long enough to put me to sleep. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm delighted to welcome you, as well as this session's speakers, Patrick Bringley and his interlocutor, Maura Hogan. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Wendy Harris and Jay Millard, and Sheila and Paul Galvini. Thank you for all you do. Now, those of you who've been sticking with us for what is 10 days now, more or less, today's session, you'll recognize that today's session ties into and exemplifies one of the most prominent themes in this festival. What does art do for us? Art in the broadest sense. Patrick Bringley's book, All the Beauty in the World, the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Me, documents his experience as a guard at the museum for 10 years. His insider take on one of the most remarkable and eclectic collections in the world is a profound meditation on the interaction between the viewer, and that could easily be translated into the reader, and the work of art on display or in your hands. It's also a story about the role of art in helping to overcome grief and loss. Maura Hogan, who's probably well known to many of us here, is contributing arts editor at the Post and Courier. She's supported the festival by interviewing many of our speakers in the paper over the years, and is doing so now with Patrick Bringley on the stage. I'm handing over to Patrick Bringley and Maura Hogan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. All right, let's get rolling. I think for those of you who have not gotten a chance to read this very beautiful book called All the Beauty in the World, it has to do with the author's own grappling with his brother's terminal illness and deciding to change his life, very much so, and become a security guard at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which he did for 10 years. So I guess my first question would be, when did you realize there was a book in your experience at the Met? And why did you think so?
Not till late in the experience. I mean, I've always been someone who writes. I'm a big reader. I loved art. I kind of knew from the beginning that this is an amazing experience, a sort of front row seat to all this stuff. So I was always putting things down in notebooks. But it really wasn't until maybe 6 or 7 years in that I got serious about trying to write a book. And the first thing I tried to do is write sort of a guard's guide to the Met. I thought, I'll sort of take all these works of art and I'll mix in some behind-the-scenes-y stuff and some anecdotes of things that I've overheard people say, and then, also talk about my reflections in the art. But I tried to do that, and it was just kind of a mess. It had no center to it. And I thought, well, there are a lot of guidebooks out there. There's lots of sort of scattershot information about art. But what you don't find so often is anything about the experience of art. What is drawing us to these museums in the first place? What keeps us in these museums? What is this sort of allure? All the time I'd be frustrated that, I'd be up in the old master painting galleries and I'd be fascinated by the Goya pictures, and I'd go and read some books on Goya, and there's lots of books, but they're all kind of about, periods and styles and influences and how his studio was set up, and that's all very interesting. But what's the center of it? What's the central thing that's pulling us to Goya? What is this sort of charisma? And I think the only way to talk about that is personally. It's a first-person experience. It's the experience of any of us wandering in a museum. So this is a long-winded way to say that it occurred to me, well, I should write something that's first person, and then I would have to explain who I am and who all these guards are and what this place is. So it kind of grew into this idea of writing a memoir.
Okay, I see. And it really was the loss of your brother, Tom, that was the catalyst for going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And the way that you process grief throughout the book is so beautiful and reflective. It certainly touched me. But I was wondering, in your own words, when you were grieving, what were you hoping to find at the Met?
Well, I don't know if I was looking to find anything particular as much as I was looking to, so to kind of tell you the story. So I had this sort of prestigious seaming job right out of college. I was working at the New Yorker magazine, and I'm at the corner of 42nd Street and Broadway up in this skyscraper. And of course, I'm 22 years old, so I can think like, I've made it, here I am. But of course, I hadn't written anything yet. I hadn't lived any life. I hadn't kind of thought any original thoughts in my life. And then when I was there a few years in, my brother Tom got ill, and he had what's called a soft tissue sarcoma, and it wasn't something that he was going to beat. And so all of a sudden, my New York City just transformed, because it wasn't so much Midtown Manhattan anymore. It was Tom's apartment in Queens, and it was a bunch of hospital rooms at Beth Israel Hospital in the East Village. And it was very clear that kind of momentous things were happening in this sort of quiet little room. And it seemed just as clear that the kind of office politics and corporate ladder climbing and sort of my kind of ambitions to, write a talk of the town piece or whatever, just kind of seemed like just kind of nonsense, like a bunch of just, razzle-dazzle by comparison. So I left the job, and then when my brother died, I didn't want to just go find some other office job. I didn't want to sort of like be back in the sort of giddy up of life, the kind of hurry of life. So the job at the Met seemed like this unbelievable sort of loophole in the universe by which I could just be inside this beautiful place with no responsibilities other than to keep my eyes up and keep my, hands empty and just be paying attention to what's happening in the given moment and just make sure that all is well inside this beautiful place. And it was, my first home section, we get assigned a home section. We work, you can be sent to the four winds, you're going to Egypt one day and Mesopotamia the next day. But I did have a home section that I spent my first 4 months and then about half my days, and that was the old master paintings. And it was not lost on me that you're working. Here, we've got some art for you.
Oh,
so here,
yeah.
Could you put up the crucifixion picture there, John? Thank you. So it's not lost on me that I'm working in these galleries full of these sort of sadly luminous pictures. This is painted in the 14th century by Bernardo Daddi. Anything about the 14th century, that was a hard luck century. Maybe a third of Europe died in the bubonic plague. Daddi himself probably died in the bubonic plague. And these are scenes, some people find this, some people are sort of dismissive of these sorts of pictures. They're old-fashioned, what do they have to say to me? But me, in contrast, I feel like the emotion in these pictures is just right at the surface. No wonder these people are painting pictures of the Passion, which is just an old word that means suffering. You get these adoration pictures, these lamentation pictures. You see kind of mix of adoration and lamentation in the same pictures. I think, I spent the better part of 2 years sitting by hospital beds. I think anyone who's done that, and I'm sure that's most of you, you know that those two emotions are very much present. It's filled with pain, and it's filled with love, and it's filled with gratitude and simplicity and sort of beauty. And I find that intermingling in these pictures to be so moving. And so I suppose I just wanted to be in their presence. I wanted to kind of not be thinking in a hurried, giddy-up kind of a way.
Okay, let's step back a little bit to the New Yorker, because earlier today, Patrick and I ascertained that we had both worked at the New Yorker, and we are going to find out on stage whether we coincided at the New Yorker. So I worked there from 2006 to 2009.
We did. I was there 04 to 07 and a half, something like that.
Okay, and we were actually on the same floor.
4 Times Square,
Because
21st floor.
Yeah, editorial events.
Yeah.
Rhonda's department.
Sure, Rhonda Sherman.
I was around the corner.
Yeah, look at that.
I know. And you, and you said your view was of the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Right? So that situates you. My view was of the Times Square Ball,
Okay,
which was up
yeah.
a good part of the year, if not all of it. But so that was right up there.
Yeah.
So we were actually pretty close. And I also worked on so what you mainly did was the New Yorker Festival. And I know there were
Like
probably
this, sort of, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. It's very similar to that, which is why you're so good at it, because you've got that experience, and it was very dazzling. Not always dazzling, though. I mean, I know that my first year at the New Yorker, and of course, I went there. I remember being in the College of Charleston. I was about to graduate and sitting on my piazza and on LeGree Street and flipping through my dad's New Yorker and saying to him, "Oh, I figured it out. I'm going to go to New York and work for the New Yorker." And in my dad's Boston accent, he kind of blanched and said, "Well, I mean, that's setting the bar pretty high." And so it took me 20 years, but I did make it. So we were in different phases in our career. And the first thing I had to do was be a sponsor for Banana Republic. The New Yorker Festival would always have these sponsors. Did you have to interact with the sponsors at all, or that
Not
part
really.
of it?
I was in the editorial part
So
of it.
you were interfacing with the authors and talent, and I was running around bathrooms just putting up displays of Banana Republic fragrances during the events. So
It's important,
right?
important work.
So it was a little different, but at the same time, I think we were there for the same reasons, because we revered the magazine and the writing that we had come. And growing up, it was sort of, for me, the wardrobe to Narnia. Charleston was much smaller then, and it seems like you had the same experience of really feeling like this was, the halcyon of wanting to be a writer.
I did,
Yeah.
but I would never have succeeded as a writer had I just stayed there. Because I don't know. The thing is, I was a kid, and all I was trying to do was figure out how to write in the style of the New Yorker. And that's not how I think. That's not my style.
Right.
So I was just sort of trying to cop somebody else's sort of sophisticated view. I mean, in a way, the whole experience with my brother was just so interesting, because you look at those paintings like that, and I think that previous to this experience, I would have looked at a painting like that, and I would have thought, oh, this is something that in order to understand, I'm going to have to become very sophisticated and very erudite. I mean, these are the sorts of things that are up in cathedrals, and they're written about in old tomes, and I'm going to have to get, some degrees, or I'm going to have to figure out how to write, the way that these guys write who just seem like, they've never smiled in their life. And it just occurred to me when you're actually going through something in life, and you're like, oh, I mean, what's going on in this hospital room is clearly what the old masters are painting. It's clearly what they're talking about. They're sort of channeling this whole story of life and death and suffering into this one story of this first century man from Judea. And in a way, it's much more valuable to draw from your life and things that kind of the heft of existence, rather than just, read old issues of the New Yorker and try to write the way that they do about art. I mean, I would not succeed at that, and I wouldn't succeed at it now. I was very lucky to have, to go a different path where I just kind of was able to spend 10 years just thinking in any style I wanted, thinking to the left and the right and back and forward and around in the bend without anyone looking over my shoulder.
Right. And you wrote this sort of beautiful, or something that I've been referring to as your preach moment in my head, that really nailed that experience of interacting with art and who owns that experience. And it was, you set it up with this experience of these students who were doing a project. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and maybe even read that paragraph from there. Sure.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. I mean, it was in the Greek. Here, put up the picture of the Greek Koros statue. So she's referring to a part where I was in the Greek galleries, and I'm in Post, and I'm just looking at these students, and they have an assignment. It was actually a pretty good assignment. The assignment was, did the Greeks really believe in their gods? Say why you think they did or they didn't, using a couple works of art as your sort of background. And these kids were kind of confused about how exactly to do that, because I think that oftentimes when we go into the Greek section of the Met, we sort of then imagine that, there's some curator upstairs who has the right answers to this stuff. And we kind of are at an arm's length from it, and we're just kind of waiting to, figure out, read the little labels, which some people call the tombstones. And they're kind of deathly like tombstones very often, just filled with kind of academic information. Whereas my perspective, you're looking at this Koros statue. The Greek who carved that, he did not know that he was carving in the archaic age that's after the geometric age, and that this is going to be inside an art museum one day. I mean, this is a grave marker. This is for some Athenian who died 2,500 years ago, a young man who did not have children, so that they want to have something that carries him on because he doesn't have children carrying him on. And the person who carved this, they want you to be thinking about that. They want you to be thinking about going to this and pouring libations before it and sort of looking down toward the underworld that the Greeks conceived of as this sort of shadowy realm that's ununderstood, that's sort of bloodless and lifeless and kind of without form. And then you lift your eyes and you see the Greek conception of life. I mean, this is Greek life, kind of this proudly, almost semi-divine figure, but also at the same time naked and permeable by any, very much not mortal. This is a young man who probably died in battle or perhaps of disease or illness. And I was encouraging those kids I taught them the Greek word epiphany to impress their teachers. That epiphany just means meeting a god. When a Greek met a god, they called that an epiphany. And Greeks thought that they met gods, And I think when we go to an art museum and we look at something like this, it's very different than reading about the Greeks in a book. You read about the Greeks in a book, you're going to learn a lot about them. But you go to a museum and you're meeting something. I mean, it's carved in stone, or it's carved in bronze, or made of bronze or something. But by dint of its beauty or silence or sublimity or whatever else, you kind of experience something that's beyond words, that sort of puts you in touch with the same things that the Greeks are thinking about. You look at an Athena statue, you get something of that wisdom, that kind of divine wisdom. You look at Dionysus and you feel this sort of, these wine cups, these kind of animalistic, you can feel like you're imbibing the wine along with it. And so I was encouraging them to do that, and I'll just tell it. So, interrupt my flow. So I think what you're referring to, I say that I think that it's important to realize a lot of people who don't feel like they can access the Met very well think of it as this museum of art history. And to me, it's not a museum of art history. It's a museum that's about life and death and suffering and the gods and kind of everything. And that it's important, we're human beings. This guy's made out of stone, He doesn't think, So if we're in the gallery with this guy, these sort of thoughts about life and death, they exist in us, and we should feel proud of our species. The Greek who carved this, he's just like us, and and it's important to not only learn about art, to sort of study art, but to learn from art, to kind of use this stuff as fuel, kind of moving forward.
See, that's when I say amen to that, because, as an arts writer, I feel it's so important and sometimes experience an intimidation on the part of people who want to embrace art but feel that they don't have the access that I feel the artist intended everybody to have for their work.
Oh, I mean, artists with very few exceptions. Well, many artists in the Met had no idea that they were artists who was going to be put in an art museum and going to be studied as art. Bernardo Dadi, who painted that in the 14th century, the previous picture, he thinks he's making sort of a little spiritual machine for reflection. And it is sort of strange how we abstract that so much that we're just looking at it as an art object rather than what its purpose was. And what was so nice about being a guard is I just had the time. I just had the time to be in those galleries and sort of be a witness to these scenes. Almost like you see in the old master pictures, there's always these little witnesses off in the corner, these like donors and things. And I often felt like that. I'm standing off in the corner and I'm just taking this in, just drinking it in.
Well, and I'd like to talk about that in a couple of ways. The first is that it can be anathema to the art experience we often have, because particularly at a sprawling place like the Met, you go in there and you feel like you need to crack as much of it as you possibly can, and you're shuttled through. You see some people sitting on benches and drawing a picture in museums, but it's very hard to just take the time and see these works the way you have been able to see them. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that experience of seeing them. And there also seemed to be kind of almost like a Zen aspect to it, of getting hired to stand still and observe.
Oh, it's wonderful. I recommend it.
Yeah.
Because, people ask me if I miss working at the Met, and oh my God, of course I do, because, now I'm at the Met all the time doing things, but I'm just like a normal person. I just have to show up. There's the new Manet Degas exhibit, and I go through it in a couple of hours. Whereas previously, it used to be that I'd be posted there, and I'd think, all right, well, I'm just going to get the lay of the land today, because I'm going to be here for 120 more hours
Right.
over the course of this exhibition's run. And it does have a hugely different, like put up the Harvesters, the Bruegel picture. I mean, there are pictures like this that I think really benefit from almost looking at them passively, kind of day after day. It's one thing to look at something with sort of sustained attention. You're thinking, oh, this is the first landscape painting in the history of Western art. So, let me study it, and let's look for the sort of things that they put in art history textbooks. But if you're just in this gallery every day, or not every day, but many, many days, it feels like just this big window that just is blasted through the masonry of the Mets. And it just rewards looking at it, just watching it kind of with your brain off, because the color harmonies just kind of become richer and more magical. Something about even just the swoop of that grain back there just becomes more miraculous in this way that's hard to put into words. And of course, it's hard to put anything about art into words, because art's not words, Art is concrete, and it's direct, and it's soundless. And this is just such a beautiful picture. And it also just kind of, not only just the formal aspects of it, but also the emotional aspects of it. These 9 peasants in the foreground that are just, breaking from the day's labor, sitting under this pear tree here, cutting their bread and having their curds or whatever the case is, having the most relaxing nap that's ever been had. And there's just something so just heartbreakingly just like, this is life, We have our own little crew, and we're in the foreground of this vast world that's spreading out beyond us, and it's labor and rest and labor and rest, and there's just something becomes so important about the picture, so kind of, full. It's just full in this way. That is, I could not, if I just saw this in an exhibition a couple of times, there's no way you build that relationship to it.
Well, and that was another question of mine, is how that 10-year experience impacted your own powers of observation, whether it is as a person, or as an arts lover, or even as a writer.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because, I started when I was 25 years old, and I ended when I was 35 years old, and that's when you're becoming a grown-up,
Yeah.
So in a way, it's hard for me to know how I would be if it wasn't for that, because my sort of whole kind of formative years were in the midst of that. So I think it shaped kind of how I look at things, kind of the pace of life that I lead, also just the constant interactions that I had with the visitors, and then eventually with my fellow guards. That just sort of pitter-patter of life, like, hey, where's the bathroom, pal? It's over there. Like, I feel like I really learned kind of how I exist as a New Yorker and as a man and a friend and all these things, like in the galleries there.
Well, let's talk about that community, because that was a really compelling part of the book, was that community of security guards. And, it occurred to me that in some ways it was more New Yorker than working at the New Yorker, because it was so representative of just the swell of people coming from all corners of the world for all different reasons. And I think it seemed to have shaped your experience there so much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you work at the New Yorker, most everyone had your same kind of education. Most of them took a more or less straight line into publishing.
Yeah.
If you work at the Met, I mean, nobody takes a straight line to become a guard at an art museum.
Yeah.
Nobody. Yeah. And as a result, it's just every kind of background. And so New York City's 40% foreign born. I would guess 60% of the Met are foreign born. There are more than 500 guards. As a result, it has the critical mass that there's no one culture of the guards. It's like the city itself. It's a very sort of live and let live culture. Everyone has their own things going on. And you sort of intersect in all these interesting ways. And the guards are from everywhere. There are, every country you can imagine, but there are also sort of concentrations. There's tons of Albanians, tons of former Soviet guards. Every time you think someone's from Russia, they're from Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, Moldova. There are tons of guards from Guyana. Actually, the longest serving guard, Mr. Sohan, Chief Sohan, he was one of the chiefs. He retired just recently. He had 49 years on the job or something. And he is Chief Sohan, and his son is Dr. Sohan, and delivered both my kids.
Oh, wow, that is so lovely.
But it is an amazing look at New York City. It's an amazing just sort of collection of all these human beings who just have these different kind of rhythms of life. But it also, I think, creates an incredible richness to how everyone interacts with the arts. I like that the Met does it, that the ambassadors, sort of the public-facing people, are just these more or less random New Yorkers. Because if we all, had art history degrees, to have an art history degree, you're a certain type of person who thinks a certain way and has been trained to think a certain way, but you also usually come from a certain background, et cetera. Whereas the people at the guards at the Met, they come at it from all sorts of schools of life, and they have all sorts of interesting and idiosyncratic sort of ways of viewing this stuff. And not everyone is going to want to talk to you, but lots of them will. And lots of them are very erudite. There are tons of artists. There's 2 magazines, Swipe magazine issues that are all art made by Met security guards. So it's a cool community.
And I think it informs in some way a conversation that is going on a lot right now, and you talk about it in your book, about mentioning with these works of art and artifacts from all over the world, that you never wanted to feel like a prison guard by standing watch over objects that might not rightfully be in a museum. So do you think there's sufficient progress in the Met and other institutions for making sure that they are coming from the right place in what they're showing?
I mean, progress, certainly. I mean, it's the Feds showed up at the Met store last year and took 26 things out of the Greek and Roman. And most of those things had come to the Met kind of in the 1990s, when the Met really didn't worry too much about this stuff. Now the Met worries quite a bit about this stuff. But I mean, I have no particular expertise in this. I mean, it seems to me that every time you have these questions about repatriation, it is just, you have to look one case at a time.
Yes.
There's no overarching standard, because all of these issues, I'm not even going to get into it, but they're so complicated. Everything is so complicated, because some things were taken out centuries ago, and all these different, sometimes when like Egypt wants something back, for instance, you almost want to say, like, can we send you some Monets instead? Because you go I've never been to Cairo, but I'm told you go to the Cairo Museum, they're dripping with stuff. They got incredible stuff. It's different in some places, and obviously it's been good. I mean, like, we would not want to go to the Met and see just American art.
Right.
Oh my Lord. That, you want it to be the world. So that's obviously a good thing. But yes, I just have to say, complicated.
Complicated,
Yeah.
very complicated. Another thing that's been happening recently, we chatted a little bit about this, is the way that there are activists and leveraging art to make a political statement. And I know that Michael Schulman profiled you in the New Yorker about it, but how does it feel being a security guard, thinking of someone going and throwing soup over, a great work?
Yeah, I don't know. It's, to me, just sort of purely, again, just not really speaking in a professional capacity, but it strikes me that those protests, like, people are puzzled by them. They're like, what? Van Gogh, soup, climate, oil, It's not sort of clear what exactly is going on there. I will say, when I was at the Met in 2012, I think it might have been, somebody was like, hey, something crazy has happened in the temple. And in the Temple of Dender, you guys probably heard about this, some of you, that Nan Golden, who's this photographer, she came in with 50 or 60 of her minions who were not advertising themselves as such, and they threw pill bottles, opioid bottles, in the fountain of the temple, and they sort of shut it down with chanting and things. And that's because it used to say the Sackler Wing right over the temple. And that was very effective, because when I was told that, I didn't know who the Sacklers were. This was kind of early on in the whole thing. So that, to me, that makes good sense. They didn't harm any arts.
Yeah.
The Met, wonderfully, a lot of the art is not behind glass.
Yeah.
If you go to, I was just in England in April, not just, but, and everything's behind glass in the National Gallery, everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of those things.
Yeah.
So it would be a shame if it,
Yeah.
I really hope the Met continues to have lots of things not behind glass, because it does just create this amazing, you're looking at this Rembrandt picture and you're like, there's not even a pane of anything between me and this.
And on that note, I know that you observed over 10 years many, many faux pas that were not intentional. So do you have any pet mistakes that you witnessed along the way?
Yeah, don't touch things. Shouldn't touch things. Yeah. I mean, people don't know that. They really don't. But, so I'll tell quickly. There was a young man in the Greek enrollment, and he's looking at this Venus statue, and he starts to try to climb it to get on her lap. And I stopped him, and he was very polite. He just didn't know. He didn't know. He had never been to a big art museum before, probably. But he looked at her, and she's got a missing head, and she's got missing arms. And then he looked all around the Roman court, just like this battlefield of statuary, broken statuary. And he said, so all this broken stuff, it broke in here? We would have to be very bad at our jobs. Yeah. But to say a word about that sort of visitor, though, I love that sort of visitor, because, you work, for instance, like the front of my book here, they got a guy who's a foot taller than me at the top of the Great Stairs, pretended to be me. And if you work at the top of the Great Stairs, and you get these people that just flow up, and they are like this. They don't know where they are. They don't know what this is, and they've never been to the Met before. They maybe have never been to a big city before, or whatever the case. And they're like, do you guys have the Mona Lisa? Like, is the Constitution here? Like, do you have dinosaurs? Where are the dinosaurs? And I truly did love that, because these people, a lot of people, they come to the Met and they figure, oh, I'm an educated person, so I don't have to talk to the guards. I have my head screwed on straight. Whereas these people, they've got these wide eyes and their head's on a swivel. And my view is that we should all feel that way in the Met, because I don't care if you're the director of that place, you don't know anything about that place. This place has 2.5 million objects in its collection. You don't have an understanding of more than a tiny sliver of those, and even of the sliver that you have some, feel for. Yeah. This stuff is about, as we were saying, life and death and everything else.
And they showed up, and a lot of people, and you cite numbers in the book about how popular it is. And do you think that that makes a comment about the state of the arts and that arts are alive and well? I'm wanting you to say yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like, one of the reasons when I was trying to sell this book with my agent, I was like, museums are very popular.
Yeah.
More people go to the Met every year than the Yankees, Mets, Knicks, Nets, Jets, and Giants combined. And the... And let's go Mets, by the way. Let's go. Yeah. But the Met will do a show, like in my last year, I think it was, they did a show of ancient Armenian art. And it was a blockbuster because it was an amazing exhibit. It got great write-ups, and then it got word of mouth, the Armenian community in New York, but then it just kind of, and it's like, that is extraordinary. It's extraordinary to see. You're clicking in, 800 people an hour into this Armenian art exhibit. Yes, I think there's a hunger for this stuff.
Okay, wonderful. Now I want to play a little game with you. That because, you went into this experience at the Met to really get something out of the art and help you heal. So let's play a game. There's some art for that.
Say that again?
There's some art for that.
Okay.
So these are scenarios I'm representing on all walks of my human experience. And you tell me a good piece of art.
Okay. Okay.
My boss has just belittled me in a staff meeting, and I am mortified.
Oh, that's easy. Screw your boss. No, I think, yeah. So one wonderful thing about the Met is you can just walk in that place and, just go from ancient Egypt to ancient Rome to Cambodia to, 16th century Benin, and just feel how huge this world is, how splendid, how much is going on, how little it cares about your boss, how little it cares for your feelings in your own head, how thick existence and reality is. So here, we haven't shown yet. Show the hand scroll picture. So this is part of the hand scroll. This is by Wang Fu. It's about 600 years old. And it's about 11 inches taller, and it's 20 feet wide. But in China, you would not have fully unfurled the thing like it is at the Met. You would have had it in your hands, and you would have slowly turned, and your eye would have taken sort of this slow hike through this. So I nominate this because what's beautiful about this, when you're taking an actual hike, it takes a little while to sort of fall into the rhythm. And if you're by yourself and you're quiet, you all of a sudden kind of can feel somewhat of a harmony with things around you. You kind of get quieter and quieter and quieter, more observant, more you feel that the world's bigger, maybe more beautiful, maybe more mysterious. That's exactly what this was meant to do. Wang Fu was himself a Taoist, and he's painting this in order to sort of fall into the rhythms of nature. And I think that that's something we can do with the Met by just walking across this, and by the time you get to the end of that 20-foot scroll, you don't give a shit about work.
Okay, what about this one? I have to speak in public at a high-profile literary event, and I look in the mirror and realize I'm not at my fighting trim.
Oh,
what do
is this
I
about
see?
me? Not at my fighting trim.
Yeah. Well, how are you going to make me feel better before
ever
I get
hear
on
of
that
Peter
stage?
Paul Rubens? Yeah. No, yeah, look at that flash. Look at those flash tones. No, again, it's again a sort of a thing. What's amazing about the Met is it can just, everything in our culture, all the ways we think, this is just this narrow band of how things have to be done. And you look and the standard of beauty is this, rolling. Yeah, so that'll make you feel good.
Okay. Roger that. I'm trying to teach my 10-year-old about war. Where would I start?
All right, I've got a 10-year-old. He's very interested in war. I think my favorite war images at the Met are these etchings that Picasso made based on the Spanish Civil War. And they're sort of like Guernica in a way, but the thing about Guernica is that it's it's sort of big and grand. Sort of as a result of it being so big, it kind of feels, monumental. It kind of has a certain amount of grandeur to it. Whereas these sketchings, and they put them out in the drawings and prints sometimes, they're just so ugly and sort of cramped and barbaric. And he has depicted Franco. They're called like the Dream of Franco or something like that. He's depicted Franco as just this ridiculous creature that looks like Snuffleupagus. He's got like these just bizarre things. And it's just this, it's filled with hatred and kind of disgust at what's going on in Spain. And I don't know, I think that maybe is a good candidate.
Okay, and one more. When my father was dying during the height of COVID, I was not permitted to say goodbye to him at the hospital, and I think of it often. How can I heal?
I mean, I guess I would just have to say my own experience of these old master pictures. Yeah. One of the ones I talk about at the end is this little Fra Angelico crucifixion that's so beautiful because, I don't know, it seems to sort of bring together all these different sort of facets of life. So you've got Jesus on the cross up there, and it's something that just feels so kind of final and so sort of non-negotiable, like death sometimes does. It's just like this broken man up on this cross right there, and that, what is there even to say about it? And then he's got in the middle ground this whole scene of this hustling, bustling life. All these Romans that are at the base of the cross, and some of them are interested and some of them aren't interested, and there's just this kind of muddle of life like there is outside the doors of the hospital or whatever the case. And then on the bottom they have this beautiful image of the Virgin being attended to by John the Evangelist and Mary Magdalene, and there's somebody else there, and with just like kind of infinite sort of compassion to the survivor and to this person. And I just feel like, that's everything. That's, there's the muddle of life, and there's the sort of, what do you even say about it? And then there's the obligation to kind of try to help out the people who are suffering and the survivors, and kind of what we do. So I don't know if I have any particular advice other than, I don't know, it's a bad break.
Yeah. So I thought it would be great. We're going to wrap up in a minute, but can you give a little tips on navigating the Met?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody should know that Patrick does give private tours at the Met. So if you're in New York, you can look him up on his website.
Yeah, look me up.
And go there with him.
All you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, let me do this before I read. She set me up to read a passage. But let me show you real quick one thing, because we didn't get to this, but it's cool.
Oh, right, yes.
Yes. Okay. So one amazing thing. So we're talking about all of my guard friends here. So one guy I write about in the book is this guy. His real name is Vincent Kitamepi. I think I call him Joseph in the book. And he is from Togo in West Africa. And just to give you a feeling for how extraordinary all this is, his favorite gallery in the Met is the Chinese Scholars Garden, the Astor Courts. And it's just this beautiful, beautiful place. And you enter it through this famous moon gate, this circular gate. And above it, it says, "In search of quietude." And it just, I like to end tours there, actually, because I think we still go to the Met in search of quietude. But in any case, he's been so kind about the book. And I was at his retirement dinner not long ago. And he's showing us the house that he's building in Ghana, where his mom's from. And he's going to live there half the year now that he's retired. And he shows us a picture. So put up that picture of the Moongate there. And he's building in his house, and he's saying, "Oh, it's not finished. But he's building in his house in Ghana the Astor Court.
Isn't that
his own version of it? So here you got a guy, a guy originally from Chicago, talking to a guy from Togo in a Chinese Scholars Garden that's on Fifth Avenue in New York City that he's building in Ghana. And that's sort of the world that I got to be a part of, which was just amazing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, you want to read?
Yeah.
And then we'll take some questions.
All right, cool. So yeah, we wanted me to read one thing. So this is my last day. I wasn't given a definite post. My chief just told me, "Oh, just wander around," And but at closing time, around closing time, I was standing at the top of the great stairs. And I'm watching that flood of people kind of come up, and I'm sort of rehearsing to myself what advice I would give to them. how do you access the Met? How do you make, what do you do as a little individual in this great but big place? So I thought I'd read that advice. So I say, you are now entering a world in miniature, its terrain stretching from the mudflats of Mesopotamia to the cafes of Left Bank Paris and 1,000 other places where humankind has really outdone itself. First, just get lost in the vastness of it all. Leave your meaner thoughts on the doorstep and try to feel pleasantly, like a tiny, insignificant speck afloat in a storehouse of beautiful things. Come in the morning, if you can, when the museum is quietest, and at first say nothing to anyone, not even a guard. Look at artworks with wide, patient, receptive eyes, and give yourself time to discover their details as well as their overall presence, their wholeness. You may not have words to describe your sensations, but try to notice them anyway. Hopefully, in the silence and the stillness, you'll experience something uncommon or unexpected. Learn everything you can about an object's maker, culture, and intended meaning, typically a humbling process. But at some point, you'll want to switch gears and throw in your own 2 cents. The Met is a place where, with your own eyes, you can see what your fellow fallible human beings have made of the world that you yourself live in. You're qualified to weigh in on that, on the biggest questions artworks raise. So under the cover of no one hearing your thoughts, think brave thoughts, searching thoughts, painful thoughts, and maybe foolish thoughts, not to arrive at right answers, but to better understand the human mind and heart as you put both to use. Find out what you love in the Met, what you learn from, and what you can use as fuel, and venture back into the world carrying something with you. Not literally. Something that doesn't fit quite easily into your mind, that weighs on you as you go forward and changes you a little bit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Thank you very much. So we have some time for some questions. 3 house rules. Let me get these straight. The first is wait till you get the microphone. The second is please stand up. And the third is please form them as a question with a question mark. So if anyone wants to ask questions of Patrick, we'd love to take them. I think there's one right there, and one right there.
Thank you so much for this talk about my favorite place in the world.
Cool.
My question is, did you ever find the key to unlock the allure of art?
Ooh, no. No, I mean, I think that's what's wonderful. That there are many keys, there are many angles, there's much mystery. What even is this? What is this existence we live? Why are things beautiful? Why are our brains built to apprehend beauty? What on earth is going on here? I think that I constantly am sort of returned to those very basic questions when I'm looking at art, rather than feeling as if I've acquired this expertise and I've sort of gotten farther on the journey. In a way, I feel like you just constantly return.
Is there, over here? Oh, thanks.
Hi, thank you for coming down to be here. I came down from New York to hear you speak.
Oh my gosh,
And-
I could have talked to you in New York.
We can arrange that. That would be fabulous. Do you bring your children to the Met now? And if so, do you let them dictate what galleries they want to visit? Or do you have a plan and try to share things with them that you've enjoyed in your past time there?
I do. The only way that it works is I split my kids. My wife and I do this all the time. I find that if I have my 2 kids, they have their own kind of energy and they're just kind of trying to gallop forward. But if I have 1 kid, I can kind of slow down their little soul long enough to get it so that they are leading the way. And when they were really younger, I would do goofy things like, make a scavenger hunt or something. But now they're 10 and 8, so they're getting old enough that they have I don't know, some heft to them. I love it. It's fun. I mean, that said, it's not as if they don't care about anything I'm doing here. They're kids. Yeah.
Oh, there's one. I see one down in the front.
Hello?
Oh, there's one here too. Okay.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I have a very simple question. How do you deal, or how did you deal with having to stand up so much? When I'm in a museum, all I see are guards that are standing up.
Yeah. Everywhere. I would be leaning right there. In fact, when you next go to a museum, try to look for guard marks on the wall. Yeah. No, really. Like at the Met, there are some famous ones
That's
where
funny.
it's just from 100+ years of guys and gals leaning a blue polyester suit against that one spot. But yeah, no, it's not easy. I mean, I was lucky in that I was young, but for some older guards, it's not a laughing matter at all. It's a very hard thing. Their knees are worn out and everything. And I don't know why we do it this way in America. If you go to Europe, everyone's sitting. But for whatever reason in America, we like our guards to stand. Yeah.
Did you have there's a question down in the front right now, yeah.
Thank you so much. This was so interesting. And the thing that just blows my mind is that you did it for 10 years. And I was wondering, because I'm thinking that the other 499 guards were probably not going to leave in 10 years and write a book. If you read their book about you, what would their book say? How did the guards?
About me?
Yes. What were the guards thinking about you?
I don't know. I mean, I think they just thought of me as a coworker. I mean, I have a lot of great relationships with a lot of them. So this was the coolest thing I've done is 2 weeks ago, the security department bought copies of my book, 500 copies of my book for everybody. So I got to sit, so the first page of the book, I'm outside the dispatch office where the, empty art crates lying around and stuff, and I did the signing right there. So it's like right there, just as they were getting their assignments, I'm signing books for everybody, which is cool. But no, I mean, this is all to say I do not intend to be like the voice of the guards, because there are so many guards that have their own books in them, or the stories in them, or paintings, or murals, or whatever it is they do. It's very cool, and it's cool to meet the new ones too, because there's always new ones.
Oh, one right down here.
And while we're waiting for the mic, I want to say thank you to all you guys, and thank you to the Literary Festival and everybody. It's just this town you got, it's something. Yeah.
You commented that the New Yorker voice was not your voice. I will confess I never heard of the book until this morning, but I started reading it just before we started, and I was really impressed in the first pages. It feels kind of novelistic. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you found your voice that's not a New Yorker voice?
Oh, it was hard. It was very hard. I mean, I just wrote and wrote and wrote. I mean, I just kind of filled up notebooks until you sort of get a feel for what kind of the voice and the tone of this thing might be. But I mean, I always just wanted it to feel very, I don't use any art history terminology. I try to keep it human. I try to keep it sort of direct with things that you can see, that are visible, and I think that maybe is what makes it novelistic, that I tried to sort of write in terms of scenes, rather than, none of it tries to be like an essay. None of it is sort of floating above, is what I tried. But I had to teach myself how to do all that. And I think, as most writers do, you read books that you love, and you fuss around, and you burn 1,000 drafts, and then you tinker away on what you end up doing, and at some point your editor says, we're done, and you're done. Yeah.
I think there's one more, or are they okay?
I think we have till 05, so I think
We got good? We're good.
I'm just curious, did you ever come across a piece of art at the museum where no matter how long you pondered it and looked at it, you just didn't get it?
Oh, tons. I mean, that's what's so wonderful. So one thing that is another nice thing about looking at art so much is that you learn your own responses. Like, I think that there's a sort of beauty response in the same way that there's a laughter response. Like, if something's funny because you laugh at it. Like, it's very clear, So it's similar, I think, with beauty, that it's a quieter little voice inside you. But you can eventually learn, when I stand in front of this, am I feeling something? Am I getting this sort of fluttering? Am I shaking my head like, oh my God, would you look at that thing? Or am I not? And very often, it's not just in terms of, some contemporary art piece that you might think is a little weird or whatever. It also might be, a painting by Corot. and you're standing in front of it, and you're like, I don't know. It just, nothing's happening. And it's not to say Corot was a bad painter, but I choose him because for whatever reason, he's not one of my favorites. It just doesn't bring, so I would never write some kind of tract against him or whatever, because I don't care about, I just try to find the stuff that I find moving and interesting and beautiful, and the flip side of that coin is just things that don't really move me at all. And I don't particularly think it's that interesting to write, this didn't move me. Like, who cares, really?
Yeah, right. Anything else?
Cool.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's a real pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick, aided and abetted by Maura, for allowing us into your arts appreciation class with a mixture of humour and humility. It's been a privilege to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right.